think we can attempt to say something with his help about the extension and refinement of the racial regime from the film world into the art world. To make this analysis with Cedric, we can remember something that he taught us. We can remember that the term racial capitalism means a lot of things, but one thing it means is that Marx must be corrected so that we understand that brutality is an essential factor of production. It does not exist solely in the relations of production, much less in the past. It's essential to the process of production itself. And a corollary to this, which Fred is already hinting at, is that brutality and violence are not the same, and they may be even opposite, again, to quote Erica from yesterday. Brutality is a force that individuates, and violence a force that restores entanglement, sharedness, which is why violence is inherent in real friendship. And it is brutality is at the heart of capitalist production process of extraction from the earth, from bodies, and increasingly from mind and emotion. This is essential to production of commodities and to the twofold character of those commodities. And this brutality is most saliently on display in the brutal individuation of the commodity that could speak. Now, to put this crassly, the people who were behind the startup called capitalism looked around at the racialization of the Irish, for instance, as Cedric again instructs us, or the subjugation of women, and they did not say, this will be useful for capitalism. They said, this is how we're going to do it. This process of brutal separation that European society had already begun in social life, we will carry this process into economic production to make a thing that will become the commodity. Another way to put this, in other words, is they didn't say, well, Iago already hates the Moor, so we could use that. No, that's not what they said. They said it's not enough that we stuck all the Jews in the ghetto in Venice. We got to separate that merchant from the rest of his community so that he can't even pray with them. This is the essence of the brutality at the heart of capitalism. This will be our principle of production and social reproduction in our world. Brutal separation at every stage of production and in every form. So if Cedric teaches us that, and if we feel the urgency right now through Elizabeth's work to ask how we can get out of being managers, and as I say, let's let's turn to the art world for a minute. Look at Art News Top 100, or don't, but take my word for it. Look at how many black people are in the top 20 of that list, for instance. And it becomes apparent that the art world has discovered that its brutal history of exclusion can now be leveraged to turn a nice little profit. But it's not just that. Contemporary art institutions were dying on their feet from moribund white art, maybe with a few feminist exceptions. And black artists have repeatedly been brought in to save them. Black artists are an art world strategy. And given that the art world is being financialized, we could say that black artists represent a new asset class. And this new asset class, of course, also requires new asset managers, new curators, new gallerists who are going to play that role, or the retraining of the old ones to be able to sell this new asset. And it requires new credit rating agencies, new auditors to accredit and validate the views of those asset managers about this asset class and their value. And that's us. We come in, we give a gallery talk, we write a catalog essay, and we say, this artist, this black artist is valuable, and that makes us feel valuable. And for a moment, everybody feels good. In this emerging version of the racial regime, the private art collector, even when it's a bank or a museum, are sort of analogous to the capitalists. But it's still an analogy. They are indeed capitalists, but they're not yet capital. Because although we talk about financialization and speculation in the art world, in fact, the artwork and the artists are not yet fully liquid, interchangeable, or dematerialized. All requirements to really be capital, right? It's still, you can buy a Basquiat, but you gotta unload that thing still, you know? It isn't immediately liquid, convertible, right? In other words, we've not yet moved from formal assumption to real assumption in the art world. Things will have to get a lot more brutal. And as our collaborator Jun Lee recently showed us, this is coming, most likely through a certification process that will probably take the form of social impact investing becoming a professional credential. And with that professional credentialization, the art and artists will become securitized, which will be the moment of real assumption, which is to say that those artists and that art will be brutally broken up into units that can be easily repackaged and bundled. In this model, it's not the curator or us who will decide the value, nor even the private investor anymore, but experts from the world of hedge funds and pension funds will work for them. One other aspect of this brutality is that whereas the studio of the days of cinema that Cedric writes about, they attempted to consolidate the racial regime through their production process, not fully successful, as Cedric teaches us and as Fred is hinting. The art world, on the other hand, refines this production process of the racial regime by having individualized black artists themselves extract from their lives, the lives of their families, ancestors, and communities in a brutal process of dematerialization. This does not mean it will be fully successful any more than was the racial regime of American film. That it does mean that everything we do in the art world in the coming years as curators, artists, and critics will be received with the indifference that is inherent to capitalism and will therefore serve its ends. No matter what we do, will further racial capitalism. What I mean by that is when full financialization comes, what we're trying to point to is that it's not going to matter. The opinions that now apparently matter from private collectors or museums aren't going to matter. They might be incorporated into a value assessment, but they're not going to matter because for capital, they don't care if you put a Palestinian flag on the wall or you made a couple of abstract cubes. They don't care, right? Because there's no they. It's an automatic subject. It's indifferent, which means they'll be able to bet on an artist becoming more famous, and they'll be able to bet on an artist being forgotten. And it won't matter to them, you know? There'll be nothing, no content to this that's of any consequence to the world of capital. And that's what we face as auditors. Another way of thinking about this dematerialization is that a kind of brutal conversion of the invaluable contained in the lives of those ancestors and relatives, and indeed artists themselves, into the valuable. Indeed, you've already heard me say it. We go in there and we say the artist's work is valuable. And in that moment, we destroy the invaluable, which friendship points to and tries to preserve. So what are we going to do?
Just one last little bit, that moment on this porch when Easy struggles with this imperative he feels to judge Mouse. And that's a moment in which he will have been held within the same carceral frame within which his own moral interiority can be serially dematerialized and constantly bought and sold. He's both a manager and an artist at that moment. He extends his constantly thwarted desire to manage himself into a thwarted desire to manage Mouse. And at the same time, he both embraces and depends upon the fact that that desire is thwarted. He only is alive because Mouse is unmanageable. And we're at a moment now where even Kant would be shocked to discover that the two things which held him in awe, the starry heavens above and the moral law within, are available not only for sale, but also for derivation. Meanwhile, we're forced again and again with the task of figuring out, so to speak, how the figure or figuration of obscurity and chaos, again in Cedric's words, can be socialized into or towards a radical general indeterminacy. How can Mouse be generalized? This is a question regarding method in forgeries, where the acknowledgement and unleashing of obscurity and chaos are understood to be fundamental to telling truth and exposing lies, exposing forgeries, which, as Chomsky says, are essential to any legitimate intellectual function, even as they may well lead to the refusal or the abolition of the figure of the intellectual. This is where something not only impersonal, not only not interpersonal, but also not ontological might emerge. Something anthological, where, for now, for the indetermination of order, we must be as more and less than one.
Our next presenter is Sophie Toubin, who is an assistant professor in the Department of Information and Communication at
Hey mama 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 mama, hey mama 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 di la do la 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 malone ne di la li da la 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 da la 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 ti. Oh say la oh shoe say I say la oh say la oh shoe say I say la oh say la oh shoe say la oh. Oh, say la, oh, shoe, say, oh, say la, oh, do.